everyone, and welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I'm gonna make a man out of you. Unless you're a woman, and then I don't know what you are anymore. Thank you, current year. And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dog, Cat, Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to Thursday. Yes, it's Testosterone Thursday. Return once again to the wonderful world of off-brand TED Talks. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Thursday evening. It's kind of nice out, so I guess beautiful could be an adjective used. But before we get into tonight's topic, who's joining me for this? I'm sure will be educational dissertation on manlyhood. Raziel, hello. Jaeger Pony, hello. Miranda Stone, hello. And everybody say thank you to Miranda Stone for providing the helpful links to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box. Kiever Dam is taking a hiatus from the social media world for a while, so she's taking a break, and we wish Kiever Dam well and hope to have her back when she's feeling better, more up to it. I can understand needing to take a break. Sometimes things can get a bit overwhelming. Who else is here? Mike R, hello. Jaeger Pony, if I didn't already say hello, hello. Advocatus Diaboli, hello. Noah Asensio, hello. Mike R, hello. Attack Alpaca, hello. Shadowclaw, hello. Shell D, hello. Who else is here? Tundamar, hello. Somnamnul Nation, hello. And then chat jump, because of course it did. Simon Willikins, hello. Spoonie the Rebel, hello. Brandon Foster, hello. Who else is here? Oh boy, all sorts of people here. Robert Pincus, hello. And Dr. Funkenstein's Ghost, hello. Funtime Bats, hello. Charles Gilligan, Gillian. Gillilan. I want to get it right. Tell me which one it is. Let's see. Gayest person on YouTube, hello. Angelverse, hello. Tall person, hello. Keldrig, hello. And I think that's everybody. I hope it is. If I missed you, if you're in the future or if you're lurking, hello, I hope you're doing well. Teethus, Teeths, Non-Vitae Rex, hello. Okay, so between Charles and Teethus, let me know approximately how to pronounce your names. I like to try to get those right. Or if I can't get them right, at least I can turn it into a meme like Bridget, who just happened to pop in as I was saying her name. Thank you guys for being my audience. I appreciate it. It's Gillilan, Charles Gillilan. All right. Hope I got that right. Hope I did. Fingers crossed. I just did a stream on Sunday about pronouncing names, so I just want to try to do my best. And Jamie Milquist, hello. All right, so tonight, why do young men worship misogynist trolls? Now, as with all TEDx's, I haven't watched this ahead of time, so I don't know what it's the speakers, there's two actually, I know that much, are going to be talking about. But I am going to make an assumption that either their main topic of conversation or at least one of their examples may be Andrew Tate. And that's why the thumbnail is a joke on that premise. Now, who is Andrew Tate, you might ask? Well, if you do ask, I don't blame you, because up until his arrest recently, I'd never heard of the guy. But rather than get too deeply into it, on the off chance that our speakers don't bring up Andrew Tate, he's basically just one of those super duper self-help guru type of guys who tries to sell you a $500 plan to be as rich as he is, or get all the women that he does, or be as cool or buff as he is, that kind of stuff. He's kind of like the pickup artist Anthony Robbins or Tony Robbins kind of deal. Or if you ever saw Magnolia. Now, Magnolia is kind of a controversial movie because really all I hear is either people hate it or they love it. I personally kind of like it. And there's a character in it played by Tom Cruise of all people, TJ Mackey. And he's one of those self-help guru, alpha male type trainer guys who goes in front of an audience and sells packages for his school on how to become alpha like him. So that's kind of that's what I assume is the kind of personality they're going to be talking about tonight, but I could be wrong. Now, why do young men worship misogynist trolls? Well, I have a theory. I have a theory at least to why some of them do. I'm not going to talk about it yet because maybe our speakers will bring it up and save me the trouble. But I do have a theory, and I will talk about it on the chance that our speakers don't, or if they do bring it up, I'll give my own take on it. Beyond that, and all that preamble, tonight's bingo card is A as in alpha male. Sure, why not? Links to the bingo cards are in the description, so get those ready. If you'd like to take part in the poll every week to choose the bingo card, you can just follow me on Twitter. They're on the screen, @scribe_light. And I post the Twitter poll sometime midday on Thursdays when I remember to do so. But with all of that as preamble, let's get into it. This TEDx talk, lasts 14 minutes and 29 seconds. So it's a bit of a sit. It's your average TEDx talk, about 15 minutes long. And Derek LaRue, thank you so much, as always, for your continued support and generosity. Derek LaRue, appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. Hope you're having a good evening. And good evening to you. Ebony Williams, hello. Ebony Williams, I saw you on a Monkey stream last night. Random American, hello. All right. Did I miss anybody else that I can get in real quick? Young Geezer. Well, there's a contradiction in terms. Hello. Unless you're just like on the cusp of being a real geezer, I suppose. Anyway, let's get into it, everybody. I'll start off with a few seconds for a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it, and we will then proceed.
Now, it's been 5 years since you've been on this red circle.
5 long years.
Okay, we've got a couple of veterans here. I have no idea who either of these gentlemen are. And it's a London women event. Okay, sure, why not? Let's see. I hear it, says Advocatus Diaboli. Sounds good, says Derek LaRue. Sounds limey, says some emulation. Maybe I should have Irate Alex on here with me to translate in case the accents get too heavy. But okay, so we have a couple of TEDx veterans on the red circle.
How has time, not only personally, but for you in your job, looking at masculinity in the world with boys, with young people, how have things changed?
Okay. Again, I don't know the context of either of our two speakers or what either of them does for a living. So I guess our second speaker, look at the interviewer and the interviewee. Our interviewee works with boys.
Do you know what? Massively. I think one of the biggest things that we've noticed, right, is post-pandemic, kids are like super far behind in their social skills.
I can't imagine why that might be, and I can't imagine who might be to blame for that.
I think they missed like 2 core years of development. So
it's not really a think. It's a they did. They did. Unfortunately, they did.
So that's been a big thing. And then I think another massive thing has been like this movement, this migration of communication online. And it feels like, I don't know if this is my age speaking now, but it feels like everything is online right now and everything's new. Like there are new apps popping up that I have no idea what they are.
It is your age showing. That's been going on for quite some time. Thank you, Keldrig, so much. Big X to doubt anyone here is at all familiar with masculinity. We shall see. Like I say, I'm more curious into the arguments or their theories on quote unquote why do young men worship misogynist trolls. Whatever their personal lives elsewise, I want to hear what their ideas are. But I can't say there's not a question mark floating over my head right now as to what we're about to talk about or what we're about to hear. So let's see. Yes. For some time now, people have been communicating electronically. There have been a lot of apps. A lot of stuff has been happening online through FaceTime and so on and Skype. These things have been around a while. It's true.
What's going on?
Be real.
Be real? I don't know what this is, but
I don't know what that is. I guess I'm just a boomer now.
Yeah, loads and loads of stuff. And I think one of the biggest things that we're facing as an organization.
Okay, I don't know who this guy works for. I wish I knew. I don't.
Is we've been inundated with requests recently to talk about the rise in online misogyny influencer culture.
Okay, first off, just as another mild complaint, and then I'll lay off. I don't know if something got cut off at the beginning of this, but it would have been nice for our let's say, interviewer to at least introduce our speaker to the rest of the audience and give some context as to who he is and what he does. But maybe that happened earlier and they edited it out. I don't know. Beyond that, okay, so misogyny online. Well, I've been hearing about misogyny online since Gamergate, so not exactly a new concern for the concerned people in the world.
And so some really harmful stuff that's going on there, right? And I think it's important that we make it clear that, like, for the kids who are accessing this stuff, that's not necessarily their fault. I think part of it is that the algorithm is going to show what it wants to show them anyway.
Or the algorithm could show them whatever their parents let them see. I wonder if parents or parenting are going to come into this at some point. And also, what age range are we talking about? Because, boys, young men.
But I think kids are really receiving this new form of messaging that's been packaged in a very specific way. And schools are contacting us with, like, real concerns about the behaviors of their boys, their attitudes, the attitudes that boys are displaying towards their peers, towards girls, towards female members of staff. Like what? I'm going to assume that he works for some organization that deals with, I don't know, Young Men's Christian Association or something. I don't think that's who he works for. I don't know. But okay, you're some kind of advisory group or some kind of consulting group or something. What kind of behavior are you talking about? And we've also had a couple of requests from parents to help to talk about these issues that they're experiencing in their relationships now with their sons. So I think this has been like a big change that's been going on for maybe about a year or so now. Okay, I'm sorry. I need to look this up and I need to find out who our speaker is. I can't. It is bugging the heck out of me that I don't know who our speaker is or who he works for. So 1 second, please pardon me a second while I do a little offhand research, I guess. Not exactly the most entertaining aspect of the show. Where did it go? Oh, they changed the title on me, didn't they? They changed the title on me, didn't they? Oh, no. Oh, they did. I put in the title and it's just, yeah. Okay, how about London women? Is that going to at least bring it up? Oh, no. Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, well, if some helpful person in the chat could go down to the description, I have a link to the original video. If you could click on that, look at the description, and if it says something about who our speakers are and who they work for or are associated with, I would really appreciate it, because I would love some even modicum of context as to who our speakers are and what they do. Thank you, Mike R. The soy is strong with this guy. I don't know yet. I need some more context. I need more information. And I can't necessarily blame it on the presentation for not telling us, because maybe the editing cut it off. But that's just really bugging me. So anyway, let's keep going. And it's a weird one, right? Because when I was like 13, my influencers were like, I don't know, like Newsround hosts and Blue Peter presenters. But now kids are being influenced by people that are being accused of sex trafficking and rape and all kinds of stuff. So I'm sure you would have heard of like people like Andrew Tate. I was right. Andrew Tate. Okay. Now, again, who is letting the children watch or be influenced by Andrew Tate? Where are the parents in this? Okay, Advocast Diabli. Let's see, Advocast Diabli. Okay, Ben Hurst is an activist, advocate, speaker, host, presenter, facilitator, trainer, and model as the head of facilitation at Beyond Equality. So that's our interviewee. That's not our interviewer, correct? And Tall Person follows up. He focuses on deconstructing and reconstructing masculinities with men and boys. Ben also works as a freelance diversity and inclusion consultant with a focus on race and oh boy. So I'm guessing he's a toxic masculinity proponent in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Redneck Ram, so much. Hell chat and Hell chat. Dun dun dun. Hell chat and Scribbly Man just dropping in to say hi and send a dog cat fox off to bed. We'll catch the replay tomorrow at work and make it a good one. A dog cat fox. Oh, dog cat fox.
Wow. Wow.
That was a Sinatra dog cat fox. Thank you, Redneck Ram. Go get some good sleep. Get some good rest. Oh, there's the dog cat fox. So that works too. Bye-bye, dog cat fox. Oh, dog cat fox.
Wowie. Wow.
Another dog cat. That's a P-dog cat fox. Ha 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 ha. I'm clever. All right. And Tall Person continues. Ben is the co-host of TEDx London podcast, Climate Curious. Ben is in conversation with Jamie Windust, an author, model, broadcaster, TEDx London women's speaker, and contributing editor at Gay Times. Okay, well, now I have some context. Appreciate it. Thank you, Tall Person. Thank you, Advocatus. Let's go.
Who's like probably spearheading this movement at the moment, but loads and loads of people online who are spreading this messaging and this propaganda, which can be really, really harmful to young people.
Okay, first and foremost, Andrew Tate might be the most well-known example of this kind of sales pitch and philosophy. It's not new. This has been around forever. Again, go back to the movie Magnolia, and you'll have a character in there that is effectively Andrew Tate, but it's from like the early 2000s or the late 1990s or whatever. I forget exactly when it came out. Either way, yeah, and admittedly, the internet allows these things to be spread more easily and more quickly, and people are able to be taken in on it a lot more easily if you're not monitoring what your children are consuming. That's the big thing. They don't have to see this stuff. You can limit their access to this kind of stuff if you're being, a wary parent.
And I think what the scariest point about this is that before it used to feel like quite a small conversation. It's now mammoth, and parents are coming back with conversations. Teachers are coming back with conversations, like you say, to you saying, Ben, what do we do? How?
Don't let your kids watch that stuff. Provide them positive male role models. That's what you do.
How does it look? What reaction are you finding from teachers and parents when it comes to them understanding what their young people are actually looking at?
It's the most natural reaction. I'm sure it's the thing that comes naturally to all of us, right? Which is like to police the behavior.
Well, or at least police the content that they're being exposed to, right? Are we talking about the influence of, let's just say, online trolls? We'll just call them online trolls, whatever the heck that means. Or are you talking about just male behavior? I'm waiting for toxic masculinity to come up. I'm going to go to the bingo card real quick to remind ourselves what we're listening for. Collectivize his own demographic. They talk about boys so far, but not technically so. If they start talking about men and so on a bit more stridently, then maybe. Systemic institutional, sales pitch for product or service. He's kind of, between the two of them, they're kind of pitching whatever consulting services our interviewee is offering. Childhood or family anecdote. They haven't talked about themselves yet. Oh, wait, no, he talked about himself when he was, what he watched when he was 13. That's right. Okay, so circling childhood or family anecdote, the kind of TV and stuff he watched. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, not yet. Plays victim, no. Microaggressions or unconscious bias. Privilege, contradicts own point or argument, don't know what it is yet. Patriarchy, might get there. Weightless example, wage gap, feminism, marginalized or marginalization, a list, and remember that has to be a formal list during the course of the presentation, white supremacy, word salad, self-vilification or wretchedness, argumentative non sequitur, attempt to coin new buzzword or buzz phrase, mind reading or assumes motives, benevolent condescension, anecdote that probably never happened, and lastly, leaves out vital context. So far I have on the board childhood or family anecdote and free space. And remember, the bingo links are in the description. We're on bingo card A.
and a pretty aggressive policing of the behavior. I think there's either one of two directions that people move in, which is the first one is to like sweep it under the carpet, ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist. Hopefully it will go away. And the second one is to come down like a ton of bricks on anything that anybody says that you think is harmful or problematic, which I can understand.
So what do you recommend then? I wouldn't think sweeping it under the carpet. Of course, you haven't actually described the behaviors yet that need to be policed, but
it doesn't actually work, right? And I think there's something about, particularly with teens, the nature of their development at that age where they're trying to like create these personalities. They're trying to differentiate from their parents, from their caregivers. They want to be contrarian. They want to think things that they're not allowed to think. They want to explore things that have been hidden from them. Right. And so I'm not sure that this response that feels very natural is having the kind of effect that we want it to have. And, you know, I spoke a couple of years ago, and I spoke about this idea of the collective socialization of men.
Okay, well, collectivize his own demographic. The collectivized socialization of men, right. That sounds like a fancy way of saying all men behave the same. Okay.
And all of these ideals that we have as a society and as a culture around what men are supposed to be and how they're supposed to behave. So ideas like being dominant,
being dominant. Okay.
A leader.
A leader. Okay. Being dominant and being leader are not necessarily the same thing.
Being in charge.
Being in charge. So, okay. You're doing variations on the same concept.
Being able to get with lots of women. So,
okay. Promiscuity. Uh-huh. All right. So you went from dominant, leader, in charge, promiscuity. That's what we expect of men? Okay.
On and so forth. And this feels like a really like carefully branded version of that, which...
Well, here's a question for you then. Is Andrew Tate actually an esteemed individual prior to his arrest? Let's put it that way, because obviously that kind of puts a filter on it. Prior to his arrest, was Andrew Tate an esteemed member of society? Was his behavior, his grandiosity, his ego, was that something that people actually appreciated on the grand scale in society? Is that what society expects? Because otherwise then Andrew Tate must be the apex predator of what society wants men to be, right? Or is there something that's not quite right about that idea?
Which is also very, very extreme and rooted at its core in misogyny.
Misogyny. Oh, I forgot. We don't have misogyny on the board anymore. That was the olden days. Okay, rooted in misogyny. So the expectation of men is rooted in misogyny. So men are expected to hate women for being women. Is that it?
And so I guess the conversation then becomes quite a complicated one, because how do you have a conversation with some kids that makes them reconsider what they're supposed to be doing?
So we went from dominant, leader, in charge, promiscuous, to hating women. All of these things are associated one to the other, but all lead to misogyny. Okay.
Exactly. And, you know, and if you're like myself, you don't have kids, or you're not at school, right. Or I know it might look like I could be in school, but
you don't. You're good. You're good. You do. You do.
Thank you. But what's most concerning is that, you know, as you mentioned many years ago, this conversation felt like it was kind of on the ether. You know, it was on the fringes.
Right.
This conversation was on the fringes. You know, I have some videos I've done on my YouTube channel from like 5 years ago talking about this exact same notion. There was one... I even remember the title of it because I just posted it the other day on a similar situation. If you go on my YouTube channel and you click on the little magnifying glass and type in the toxicity of our self-pity, I'm making a play off of that song title. There was a video, I think it was from Splinter, back when Splinter existed. After, you know, that was what came after Fusion, because they were so clever. making these exact same arguments and associations between attributes of masculinity that are either positive or relatively benign, like leadership, and then immediately associating it with something dire like misogyny. No, this isn't on the fringe. This has been going on for a long time.
Right.
It was happening in a way that you could kind of not tokenize it by saying it's just those few people on the side, but now it's everywhere, you know.
Dude, I would like to introduce you to Gamergate and the fallout from that. I'd like to introduce you to the toxic masculinity drumbeat that's been going on for at least 7 years that I've been paying attention to it. This is not new. This philosophy, this sort of widespread accusation is not something that just happened. It has nothing to do with the pandemic. It has everything to do. Well, I'm gonna wait. Maybe they'll talk about what I think the issue is.
It's insipid. It's on the in our society.
Yes, masculinity is in our society. You're correct. And accusations of inherent flaw in masculinity is in our society, yes, which is, of course, never been the case at all during the time of third wave feminism or elsewise. Yeah.
And I don't really feel like that's being spoken about because people just presume, no, they're over there. They're on the internet. People use the internet.
Do they? Do they really?
Human beings are the people behind that.
Yes, human beings are behind the internet. It's as far as we know. I mean, we all might be living in a simulation. So, how am I sounding now? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Again, for those of you in the future, hopefully I'll have cut out a little bit of a technical problem. For those of you live, can you let me know how I sound? Fine, says Advocatus. Better, says Jay. Sounds good, says Derek. All right. So tell you what, guys, I'm gonna scroll back in the video a few seconds here, try to make up for lost time. Apologies for those of you listening in the future for the technical foul up, but that's the price of live television. So we're gonna start back over here now. In case I don't know when things got cut off. So at some point here in the next few seconds, our interviewee mentions a book. And so I circled sales pitch for product or service, collectivize his own demographic, sales pitch for product or service, childhood or family anecdote. And what happened? It just cut off. What cut off? What? Okay, now you guys are making me worried again. Am I cut off? I'm fine. Go back 30 seconds. Okay, all right. We'll just take it from 5 minutes at the top and move forward. I'll have to pause in between because I got to avoid any kind of matching issues and things like that. So let's start over.
Saying it's just those few people on the side, but now it's everywhere. You know, it's insipid. It's on the internet. It's in our society, and I don't really feel like that's being spoken about because people just presume, no, they're over there. They're on the internet. People use the internet.
As I said before, yes, people use the internet. It's over there in the fringes, etc. No, nobody who's been on the internet for 7 years or so thinks it's on the fringes. That kind of thing. And besides which, the alpha male life coach, follow my path and you can earn money and get the girls and everything else, that's been around forever. That is nothing new. That kind of thinking, that kind of stuff is nothing new. There are figures and charlatans like that all over the place all the time. I don't know where you've been living, but whatever.
Human beings are the people behind that. And there's a perceived safety in that idea, isn't it? That it's hidden.
Yeah, do you know what? One of my personal faves, Laura Bates, speaks about this in her book, Men Who Hate Women.
A very balanced title by the way.
And some really interesting ideas in like this perceived safety that we have around these ideas being fringe ideas that are like on the outskirts of our society. And whilst that's still concerning, I think it gives us a little bit of rest because we're like, it's not really having that much influence. But I think at this moment that we're in now, we're seeing that this has become mainstream. It's become very, very normal, very dominant narratives that people are accessing.
You know why that is? Okay, and we're 6 minutes into a 14-minute thing, so we're almost halfway through this thing, and they haven't brought it up yet. If they do after this, then so be it. I'll be repetitive preemptively. First off, as I mentioned at the top, if you are a parent and you are not monitoring and taking part in or, regulating what kind of stuff your kids consume in social media and otherwise, these days, especially now, I think you're being less than responsible as a parent. I think it is unavoidable that parents today have to pay attention and have to monitor and meter what their kids are consuming. Your kids can't afford to pay the internet bill. They can't afford to buy a phone all by themselves. Okay, so up to a certain point, you have control over what they're consuming. And sure, they're going to see things at school or on their friend's phone or that kind of thing. But you have to offer the alternative by building the alternative around you at your home. That's the first thing. But here's the other thing. Here's the major thing. And it's, I guess it might not be surprising, at least so far. If they say something else in the next 7 minutes or so of the presentation, so be it. I'll tell you why a lot of young men find themselves attracted to figures like Andrew Tate. Okay? And here's the problem. For the last decade at least, okay, and most certainly, at least as far as I've been able to monitor it or witness it in the last 7 years in particular, the idea that boys are inherently flawed has become a mainstream notion in both education and politics and media. Okay? He for she, time's up, me too, toxic masculinity, on and on and on. Switching out the superheroes for girls. Men are always the ones who have something to apologize for, and on and on and on. This is and has been the mainstream message delivered to young men for at least a decade in almost nonstop fire hose fashion. All right. And here's the problem. Guys like Andrew Tate go to the extreme of saying, you have nothing to be ashamed of. And that is an attractive message to people who have been battered socially and rhetorically for most of their lives. Now, of course, he's the worst kind of role model, but when he's effectively saying all of these hyper masculine things are things that not only can you have, but look, they're doing me good. Well, that can be a very, very honeyed words to somebody who's had nothing but vinegar poured in their eyes for the last 10 years. And so that's why you need to promote positive, healthy male role models who don't go to the extremes of excess and ridiculousness like the cartoonish Andrew Tate, but actually reflect the positive aspects of manhood, of being a provider, of being a leader, of being responsible, of being calm under pressure, and so on. Right? Not the excess, right? The balance. But we don't have that now. All the role models, all of the zeitgeist, all of the rhetoric is that men are inherently flawed and they have everything to apologize for just for existing. So if you wonder why the pickup artist line and the misogynist trolls line are gaining so much attention, is because at the very least, those guys are saying, you've got nothing to be ashamed of. Now, just pay $500 for my special package of information and you can become as much of a jerk as I am. Will they bring that up in this talk? Well, I hope so. Let's find out.
And it's everywhere. Like, honestly, we don't go into a school without it coming up anymore. I think every single school that we've been in, maybe for the last year now, there's been a conversation, at least one conversation, if not more, about this kind of stuff, right? Andrew Tate or whoever it might be.
Do you have any other examples beyond that? There are others out there, you know. Andrew Tate is just one example of many. But let's go on the flip side. What about Instagram models? Right? On the female side, if you want to talk about the excesses or the high aspirations of absolutely and totally produced lifestyles, it's not just a male thing. There's a lot of this to go around. But if you're going to talk specifically about the male side of things, you have to talk about the vilification of masculinity. You have to. You have to at least consider the possibility that you are driving boys to people like this if you constantly make them feel bad about themselves.
And it is being specifically targeted at young people, which obviously makes sense. Like when you think about what the messaging is, it's obviously much harder to convince a 35-year-old man that he's less of a man because he doesn't own a Bugatti than it is a 16-year-old boy.
I don't know if you know the demographics that buy into Andrew Tate's stuff. It kind of runs the gamut. But yeah, target the young. What? Yeah, they have access to money or their parents' money, right? If some Andrew Tate guy gets 2 or 3 crypto bros on his side, he's done. He doesn't have anything else to do. He's got his payday for like the year. Of course. Who's going to spread your message quicker and more efficiently online? Is it going to be the 35-year-old who has maybe, hopefully, a little bit of sense in the world? Or yeah, the 16-year-old who's on 17 different social media apps and can share one video across all of creation in about 10 seconds? Yeah,
sure.
So that messaging obviously works for certain demographics better than it works for others. But I think we're at this precipice where we're seeing these ideas.
What ideas? Please be specific. What are you talking about? If you're talking about leadership and being in charge, those aren't inherently negative.
Starting to become action. And that's what's scary about it, right? In my previous talk, the tagline was, boys won't be boys, boys will be what we teach them to be.
Okay.
And this idea that the reason that this is an issue is because boys grow into men.
Yes, boys to men, NEC, VBD. Back in school, we used to dream about this every day. Oh.
But in Greece the other day, maybe weeks ago, right, we saw protests, hundreds of boys taken to the streets to support these ideas and to chant for the freedom of their leader.
Were there protests in Greece? Wait, are you still talking about Andrew Tate? Why are you being so opaque with what you're talking about? What ideas? Name one philosophy. If you just said misogyny, I could kind of accept that maybe, but this is frustrating.
And so this is no longer something that is just hidden away on the internet. It's no longer in the back corners of Reddit forums.
You just said that earlier. Is that we're just coming back around to the center again? Okay.
This is a conversation that's urgent and a conversation that we've all got to start having.
Okay, so some kids or whoever protest in Greece for, I'm assuming you mean Andrew Tate, and that represents all boys. Okay.
Absolutely. Exactly like you say, that these conversations may happen on the internet, but they turn into action. And I personally...
Like what? What are you talking about?
Noticed, if you take my TEDx London talk and you look at the commentary on that, a lot of it was kind of just quite explicitly transphobic, which
the comments on your TEDx London talk. Okay.
It's obviously awful, but it didn't have the kind of visceral take that a lot of the online commentary that I get now is very political, it's very conservative, it's very right-wing, it's very violent, it's very
Okay, and that's all in the vein of Andrew Tate, or is that all in the vein of masculinity?
Very specific, and it's very kind of pointed at me, at like we're saying.
Okay, so you've been personally insulted, and so now that represents what?
Where I should belong, what I should be doing, why I'm this and that. You know, it's very potent, and I think the Greece, for example, that is a great example of how these conversations turn into action.
Greece is a great example of how conversations turn into action. Okay, so again, without any more information, okay, I'm circling leaves out vital context, but I'm going to jump to a conclusion just for the sake of trying to hash this out. Okay, so assuming we're talking about Andrew Tate fans in Greece got together on the internet and said, let's go protest, and they got together and they went to protest. So these conversations lead to action. Okay, how is that any different than a climate protest or a Black Lives Matter protest or a protest against police violence or anything else? I mean, maybe I'm just coming at it from a First Amendment perspective of, well, unless they were doing something, and I don't know. Does anybody know what happened in Greece? Was there a violent protest? Was there like a riot or something? Because I don't know. But if they were just protesting, so what? They're protesting on behalf of someone that you don't agree with. That I think that most rational people probably wouldn't agree with, but that's beside the point. What does this have to do with anything? What does comments on your TED Talk have to do with this? And here's another thing too. If somebody says something mean about you, here's a thought, ignore it. It's words. It's words on a screen. That's all it is. It carries no more weight to it than you give it.
We've covered what's going on. We've covered how it's really important that we engage. What do we need to do now? How does that look like? Broad question. Hate me all you like.
I don't hate you. It's just, it's frustrating to hear an interviewer either not get specific or not have very pointed questions on subjects like this to get very pointed answers, because you don't, if you're sitting there interviewing somebody and you just give the most broad question you can think of and then just kind of trail off, you're going to get probably an answer that tries to cover too much ground. Ask a specific question. You have notes in front of you. You don't have a specific question to ask.
But what do we do?
You need to hire beyond the quality. No, I'm joking. I think that we know, right, for sure that policing the behavior doesn't work. We know that policing the behavior doesn't work. Okay, well, since we're not going to be told what behavior we're talking about here, so far we've had leadership, dominance, in charge, promiscuity, and then misogyny. All right, so policing that behavior doesn't work. I don't know. When I was a kid, and I feel like such an ancient figure saying this now, when I was a kid and I did something wrong, or I treated someone badly because I was a kid and I didn't know any better, or I acted out of my emotion rather than my sense, my dad was there to correct me. Sometimes quite stridently. Sometimes policing does do it, because you need someone there to tell you, no, that's not how you behave in polite society, or no, that's not what a real man does, etc. But okay, you're giving up on policing, whatever policing means in your mind and whatever behaviors we're talking about. Okay. That the core of any transformational work has always been deep reflection, has always been in like conversation. So
how does policing not lead to a conversation? You're going to have a conversation, right? I mean, if you're my kid and you're acting out of line and you're like hitting your sister or something, we're going to have a conversation. It's going to be a very one-sided conversation, but we're going to have a conversation. And you're going to learn. You're going to learn what it means to actually be a man and be a protector and be a big brother, right? And I'm effectively relaying a conversation I had with my father when I was very, very young and I didn't know any better. And I was too rough with my sister. So, and I learned real quick.
So I think we've got to find a way to move towards that. Keith McGee, in his TEDx London talk recently, spoke about this idea of listening for connection rather than listening for conversion, which is something that I think really resonates with me, especially when we're working with young people.
Listening for connection rather than listening for conversion. I don't know. I don't know what this means. This is all, I mean, this sounds like the opposite end of the spectrum of the self-help, feel-good, pop psychology stuff.
Because the idea here is not that we are listening to them to try and get them, to trick them into changing their minds. But I think that actually...
Trick them into changing their... About what? What are you talking about? Of all of this, you cannot give a specific example. You have been in schools. You've been talked to by parents. You've been asked by parents. You've been asked by teachers to do what? Why can't you get specific? Why is everything so amorphous?
As facilitators, as adults, as leaders, there's a lot of value for us in...
Whoa, leaders? Whoa, wait a second. Leaders? I just had somebody tell me not too long ago that a sense of leadership is actually the pathway to misogyny. Do I have to suspect you now?
Understanding why these ideas are resonating so much with them, understanding where they're coming from. We as an organization have supported Bold Voices, another organization, to develop some toolkits which are really, really good.
I know at least one source of where it's coming from. Stop vilifying masculinity. Stop telling boys that they are broken and need to be fixed from the get-go. Because all you're doing is driving them towards people who, at least on the surface, are not judging them for what they are, but are, after a fashion, celebrating what they are. It is a very attractive message. If all you've been told your entire life is that you need to be fixed, that you are broken, that you are a defective girl, effectively. You talk about self-reflection. Right? You talk about listening to connect. Well, then, are you going to entertain the possibility that your philosophy on how to treat boys or how to see masculinity might, in fact, be contributing to the problem?
For teachers and for parents on how to tackle these conversations with kids about these online misogynist influences. And I think the core of it is like things that we say all the time, right? Being compassionate, being inquisitive, asking questions, following thoughts to their logical conclusion.
Yes, because obviously none of those attributes, none of those things exist in men naturally. Oh, no. Critical thinking. Oh, thinking ahead, considering other people's feelings. Obviously, those are completely alien elements to the makeup of any average boy, right? Right? Yeah, that's the implication, right?
And acknowledging that young people are going to be young people, right? They're going to make mistakes, and that's part of being young.
Is that something that you accept? Okay, so again, what kind of behavior were you talking about? And if you're going to allow for mistakes, then does a mistake not indicate that they have other positive attributes to them beyond some action that doesn't fit? Are boys inherently mistakes? Is masculinity inherently a mistake? Or I don't know. I'm getting mixed messages here.
But actually, one of the great things about young people is that they change their minds all the time, right? So I think if we can have some good conversations with them where they're really allowed to explore, then hopefully they can move towards better conclusions for themselves.
Are boys these days allowed to explore their masculinity, or are they constantly berated and barraged with messages that they are to blame? in the media, in academia, in this kind of format? You tell me. I don't know. Well, actually, I do know because I've watched it for the last 7-8 years.
Absolutely. You know, I liked Edward,
Yeah.
and then I liked Jacob, and then I went back to Edward.
Relatable, clearly, yeah.
Reference.
Do you see now, if we follow that advice, do you see a way forward?
What advice? What was the advice again? Sorry, I'm going to go back. I got so caught up. I'm going to give him another chance. What advice are we being given here?
Being inquisitive, asking questions, following thoughts to their logical conclusion, and acknowledging that young people are going to be young people, right? They're going to make mistakes, and that's part of being young. But actually, one of the great things about young people is that they change their minds all the time, right? So I think if we can have some good conversations with them where they're really allowed to explore, then hopefully they can move towards better conclusions for themselves.
Why not offer them positive male role models? If your biggest concern is the Andrew Tates of the world, you have to offer them an alternative, a positive alternative. The positive aspects of masculinity, the positive aspects of being a man, not just the most egregious, not the most self-indulgent. What about offering boys alternative, positive male role models to compete with the Andrew Tates of the world? What about that method? I mean, what is that just completely out of the bounds of possibility here?
Absolutely. You know, I liked Edward,
Yeah.
and then I liked Jacob, and then I went back to Edward.
Relatable, clearly, yeah.
Do you see now, if we follow that advice, do you see a way forward?
Well, if he's giving the advice, he must believe it's the way forward. Didn't you just ask that?
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad.
So
Boy, real in-depth analysis going on here. You know, when I asked you a minute ago, how do we solve this? And you gave your advice. And then I said, if we follow this advice, do you think it's going to work? Yes, I'm glad.
sorry, I interrupted your question mid-question, but do I see a way forward?
Period.
Yeah, 100, period.
Now, that was the question. You didn't interrupt him. That was the totality of the question. Do you think the advice you just laid out in the work that you do is the way forward? Yes. Okay.
100%. I think there is always hope, right? And for me, I find a lot of hope in knowing that the amount of influence that's been had over young people in maybe just the last year or 2 years has come from somewhere. It's not an immovable force that we can't change.
Why are you building up? And again, you've only brought up one name so far. Why are you building Andrew Tate up into this quasi-deity-like figure? He's just one extra influencer schmuck on the internet who happened to blow up for reasons I still don't quite understand. But, I mean, I'd never heard of him till he was arrested. I would love to know, and I'm sure somebody out there might have some metrics on this or something. How popular was this guy during the course? I mean, I know he makes millions of dollars, but really, honestly, these days, somebody making millions of dollars on the internet selling garbage or influencer BS or something, it doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot to me anymore because it seems like those are a dime a dozen now. Really, is this it? Andrew Tate is the end all be all?
It just means we've got significant work to do to influence them in the opposite direction.
Yeah, by being a better role model. Why are you not bringing up role models? You're talking about conversations. How about leading by example or encouraging fathers and big brothers to lead by example?
Yeah. And I think for us as a culture, as a society, that's going to look like mass education, right? And I think
What?
also a reinvestment in teacher training, like is absolutely fundamental to moving this forward.
Teacher train. Okay, so now it is okay. So you're handing off more of the parental responsibilities to the academy. You're encouraging parents to abrogate their responsibilities in raising their boys to teachers. Why? It is not a school teacher's responsibility to raise the children. Or I should say it shouldn't be. But heaven knows these days it seems to be the standard.
We can't just keep telling people.
Yay!
I know. We can't just keep telling people that they've got to do a better job without equipping them to do a better job.
Who? Do a better job equipping them? What training are you recommending be given to teachers to make boys better? I know I'm not going to get an answer, but now I'm decidedly curious to know what he is suggesting. What training should be provided school teachers towards raising better men?
I think it's going to need a concerted effort from all of us to be able to achieve that.
Sorry, I just like with every broad, vague statement of purpose, I just need a moment.
And I think the other part of this is providing them with effective alternatives, right?
Alternatives to what? And you still haven't justified to me why it should be teachers who are doing any of this.
So a lot of this stuff is rooted in these ideas of domination over women.
Domination over women. Okay. You want to expand on that?
In ideas of success equating to money.
Well, oftentimes success does equate to money, unfortunately. Now, I don't necessarily equate success with your bank balance. I, in fact, had this conversation one time a long, long time ago. I was at a friend's house for, I think it was Thanksgiving, and it was just me, my friend, and his family. I'd never met the rest of his family before. And one of his family members, who was just a little bit older than we were sitting around in the living room and just kind of chit-chatting or something. And they asked me, what do you do for a living? And I said, oh, well, I do contract processing and this, that, and the other. And this person, I felt right after this that I was a bit more mature for my years, even though they were older than I was. They said, oh, well, I'm more successful than you are. And I'm quoting exactly, I'm more successful than you are. And I was like, okay, how do you figure? Well, I make more money than you do. Oh, well, I guess that's nice. I don't necessarily define success by how much money I make, because, and then I went into this very brief, very polite little litany of how, I went to school and I did very well in school, and then I got my first job and I did very well at my first job, even though I'd never been in retail sales before. I did very good at it. And then I ended up in my first real job out of college, which was what I was talking about then. And, I succeeded here. And I mean, I see success as, overcoming the challenges that are put in front of you in life. But they were indignant and they said, well, I make more money than you do. I'm like, okay. I mean, it's a matter of perspective, I guess. Maybe I was being too kind to myself. I don't know. But, okay, so domination over women and success as represented by money. Okay.
And looking like being the man, being dominant, being in control.
Being dominant and being in control is not necessarily bad things. It all depends on how you're doing it, how you treat others, how you treat yourself. Okay, how are you going to counter this?
And actually, I think we've got to create new models of financial education for young people.
Well, for young people across the board, male, female, or otherwise, yes. Financial literacy, especially these days, with so many instantaneous push button schemes and ways they can get your money and crypto and NFTs and all this. Yes. That's got nothing to do with masculinity. That's got everything to do with just healthy financial literacy. Okay. Well, I agree with our speaker on something.
If that's something that they want, then why is that not something that we're giving them? And new models of mentorship. I'm not big on the idea of role modeling.
You're not big on the idea of role modeling. Okay, I'm going to back up a second. I want to hear that again, and I want to hear whatever he says after this, because I am now very curious to know what the next statement is after that. Okay.
That's not something that we're giving them. And new models of mentorship. I'm not big on the idea of role modeling, but I do think there's a case for like some people who are doing some good stuff in the world and not being absolutely disgusting people whilst doing it.
Sure.
I mean, damning with faint praise, you're not big on role modeling. Again, and I know I'm a broken record, how would you otherwise suggest to counter the Andrew Tates of the world if you do not promote and engender, no pun intended, but I'll take it, positive male role models as a counterpoint? You're not big into role. What do you think your purpose is in interacting with young men? Right? I mean, everything else aside, personal philosophy aside, I would love to know then what our speaker thinks at least part of his role, or let's just say utility. Here, I'll use my vocabulary. What does our speaker think his utility is in having conversations with young men, if not to stand as a role model for whatever his version of best is? You're not big into role modeling. Why not? Why wouldn't you be? Aren't you encouraging young men to think a different way about things? Hasn't that what we've been hearing for the last 12 minutes of your presentation? Hoi, Columba. Thank you, Mr. Tickletrunk, for the happy, smiley, lovely dog cat fox. Oh, dog cat fox.
Wow.
Oh, man. I was pretty sure that was the right button to push, and I was right. I needed a pick-me-up after all this vinegar. Thank you, Mr. Tickletrunk, for giving me the opportunity to hit the correct button. Tailed feature. Yes, if you guys do not know about Tailed feature on YouTube, and you'd like to hear a Scotsman talk from time to time, go check out Tailed feature on YouTube. He's got a couple of channels on there. He's got Tailed feature, of course, and Scottish feature. He also has a weekly show with several others of his brethren in the UK called Regional Variations, where they talk about what's going on, at least from me, across the pond. So if you have any interest in that or just want to hear a cornucopia of accents, go check out Regional Variations over on Tailed Features channel. Okay. You're not big into role modeling. Right.
To get some more promotion and spotlight.
Sorry, let me back up just a smidge.
Rules of mentorship. I'm not big on the idea of role modeling, but I do think there's a case for like some people who are doing some good stuff in the world and not being absolutely disgusting people whilst doing it.
Sure.
To get some more promotion and spotlight.
So you're not big on role modeling, but you think that role models would be a good thing that operate in opposition to people like Andrew Tate. Okay, thanks.
As a base level.
Yeah, that would be good.
Sure. And I think it's exactly like you say,
level.
a lot of these conversations can come out of fear. And I think for me, just reflecting back on that, there's a split between personally engaging in that conversation.
What? There's only one conversation now? Thank you, Miranda Stone. You're my role model. Oh, Miranda. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So sorry. Please accept my apology. Well, thank you, Miranda. I appreciate it. I hope I do you justice. Wait, that came out. Oh, was that my toxic masculinity talking? I don't know. But thank you, Miranda. And thank you for taking up the mantle, temporarily at least, for Kiever Dam in providing the fundraisers. By the way, I mentioned them at the top of the show, didn't push them quite enough as I should have. If you take a look at the links at the top of the chat box for the fundraisers for our friends Moonshock and Angry Illinoisian, both of them have experienced some medical difficulties in recent times that have been very trying. And they and their families would certainly be grateful for any help you could provide if you have a couple of bucks to spare. Or if you can't donate, that's perfectly fine. But if you can share those links out on social media, that is also very much appreciated. So thank you for that. Okay, only a couple minutes left. What is our interviewer talking about again? And
I think for me, just reflecting back on that, there's a split between personally engaging in that conversation, and seeing that conversation and thinking, that's harmful to me. What? I have a choice now. I can either completely disregard it, as you mentioned, sweep it under the carpet to look after myself and to say, I don't need that. That's nothing to do with me. Right. Or I can say, this is impacting me.
What is impacting you? What? Man, I said this in my interview with Dave's Lemonade. When I'm listening to these presentations, in my mind, I'm sort of following along, waiting for these certain peaks to hit in a structure similar to a persuasive essay. You have your introduction, where you state your hypothesis. You have your body, where you give examples and arguments to back up your hypothesis, and then you have a conclusion that restates your hypothesis and harkens back to the examples you gave in support of it. And every time I hit one of these points where they say something that has absolutely no definition, either literally or figuratively, or they give us some broad notion of something, my brain is like reaching out sort of into the ether for that next little part that gives it some specificity. And when it's not there, it's like it's like after you've gotten your wisdom teeth out and there's that hole in your gums for a while and you feel that kind of aching, empty, that's what's happening in my head. That's what's happening in my head. Oh, I hate it.
But who else is it also impacting? Can I help protect them from what is essentially a more potent threat? Yeah. Because although, yes, and as you say in your work, although, yes, we shouldn't have to talk to the oppressors if we are being oppressed in that way.
Whoa. Who are you talking about? I thought we were having conversations with young men to try to encourage them in some way, shape, or form away from negative behavior. I mean, that was the gist of what I thought we were talking about, to quote unquote have these conversations. But now we're having conversations with the oppressor? Who is the oppressor? What? Andrew Tate? What?
We do hold collective responsibility, putting your fingers in your ears and saying this isn't happening isn't going to necessarily help.
You guys, okay. You know what? I accept it. You guys are TEDx veterans because this is classic TEDx, just nonsense. Like nothing. Weightless example. This entire talk has been a weightless example. These conversations and so on and so forth. I'm circling. I apologize. I haven't been paying attention to the bingo card as much as I should have. I'm going to circle weightless example. Also, our interviewer talking about the comments left underneath his talk were causing him so much anguish. I'm circling plays victim. You don't have to read those. You can just ignore. You can't ignore those. Nothing happens. They're just words on a screen.
Us as a collective and all of us work together, which I think is the common thread between all of our speakers today, is that all of our stories are incredibly different, but the thread that brings us together is that we share the empathy of what it feels like to go through something like this.
Something like what? Something like what? What are you?
I don't want to be back here in 5 years' time having the same conversation with you, Ben.
You're going to. You're going to, because you could have the same conversation 5 years from now, and since, save for the reference to Andrew Tate, you mentioned nothing of current matters, you gave no specificity anything, and you gave no examples on which anybody listening to it could ground where we're at. You know what? If I'm still doing YouTube in 5 years, and I remember to, I'll bring back this TEDx and pretend like it was posted yesterday. And you know what? I doubt anybody will be able to tell the difference. Because this conversation, quote unquote, has been had for at least the last 7 years. And since there's such a business angle in promoting the vilification of men, it'll probably still be relevant 5 years from now. In that sense, at least.
I'm sick of the sight of you.
Honestly, I'm doing my best, but this is difficult. And I think, again, right, and this is to speak to what you're saying, this idea of people who are on the margins shouldn't have to do this piece of work.
Oh, for crying. People on, okay, marginalized, marginalization, circle in that one. What are you guys talking about now? People on the margins shouldn't have to do this work. You're talking about men. You're talking about at least half of the world's population. There's no margin. But
I think we have to hold that truth hand in hand with the other truth, which is that we are all impacted by this, and it requires all of our action to change it. So I think we've got some work to do, but we are more equipped now than we've ever been. And I think if we all band together, we can make some real change in this area.
And that's up to you. That's down to you, love.
Yeah, me personally.
Okay, we're almost done.
Yeah, just you.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much. You're an absolute delight.
Okay, that was it. That was it. Okay, well, I said it before, and I'm going to repeat myself. They mentioned self-reflection. Okay, self-reflection requires, at least at some point in the process, to imagine the possibility that you could be wrong. Okay? That maybe you've got a wrong angle on this. And what leads from that notion, even as just a thought experiment. But there was no self-reflection here. It was just Andrew Tate bad, which isn't exactly a controversial notion to anybody that has any sense. And that, did they ever ask the question, why? Why are young men being attracted to Andrew Tate? What is it about him? What is it that he is offering young men that our speakers on the stage are not? Why is Andrew Tate, at least as an entity or as a concept or as representative of that kind of thinking, why is he an enemy of our speakers at all? There's no reflection on that. There's no conversations of connection on that, apparently. If you do not understand what is attractive about Andrew Tate, you're not going to be able to counter it with something that is healthier. It's just, it boggles my mind. And I don't know. This TEDx talk seems slightly edited. Like the ending seemed awfully abrupt. There wasn't any kind of preamble to their conversation before they were on the stage. Maybe there was some part left off. I don't know. But this is what was presented, and this is what we have to work with. So anyway, I'm going to move on to the bingo card, which I have been decidedly neglecting overall because I've been so engrossed in listening to our speakers. Let me zoom that in just a smidge. Is that too much? No, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to update the bingo card here. This is what I have. I'm going to go over the bingo card one more time by myself, and then I will move on to your guys' suggestions for squares to be circled. So if you've got an argument for one of those, hold on to it for a minute or three. Let's see. Systemic institutional. Society, schools, The expectations of society for men, so on and so forth, certainly. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, I know that those notions were mentioned in the capsule description of our speakers on the talk itself, but it didn't come up that I can recall in the presentation, unless I'm forgetting. So if I'm forgetting something, by all means, correct me, but I'm going to leave it blank for now. Microaggressions, unconscious bias. Yeah, you want to talk about unconscious bias? Yeah, either as mentioned by our speaker or implied by their own omissions. Privilege. Not explicitly enough that I can circle it reflexively. I don't think so. Contradicts own point or argument. Yeah, leadership. It mentions leadership as one of the associated cardinal sins to misogyny, and then promotes the idea about being leaders. Well, what's the difference between being a leader from your perspective versus being a leader from the other side? Is leadership by itself being in charge? Let's see. Patriarchy. Well, yeah, domination over women, misogyny, etc. Obviously not promoting those things, but at least mentioning the concept. Wage gap. Now, he talked about success as defined by money, but they never really talked about like economics or disparities thereof. So I'm hesitant to do that. Feminism, not really. I mean, you could probably make an argument that some of what they were pushing falls within the framework of third wave feminism, or at least in the way to how to approach masculinity. And I'm happy to take that argument if you have it, but I didn't hear any, they never said the word feminism, and they were so opaque in what they were talking about. So if there's a good argument there, I'll take it. A list. Yeah, he did give a list. He said domination, leadership, being in charge, promiscuity, or being with a lot of women, and misogyny. So he listed off the chief cardinal sins of being a man, I suppose. White supremacy. No. He brought up marginalized, etc., but didn't go much deeper than that. And I already circled marginalized, so no. Word salad. I mean, everything they said was vague. Was it word salad? Yeah, it really was, because there are points at which they were just saying things. Yeah, both speakers just kind of trailed off into just absolute pablum over and over again, saying the same things or whatever. Self-vilification or wretchedness. I didn't get any sense of that, like I'm part of the problem. I never really got that sense. They both, as far as I could tell in the context of the presentation, they saw themselves on the other side of the problem. So, argumentative non sequitur. I know there's one in there. I'm blanking right now. There's a point at which I lost my mind for a second, wasn't there? I'm going to need somebody to back me up or to argue on my behalf. I'm blanking all of a sudden. Attempt to coin new buzzword or buzz phrase. No, there wasn't anything new being said. Mind reading assumes motives. That these behaviors, we have to tell boys this, collectivize boys and so on. Yeah. Okay. Benevolent condescension. I felt a little bit. I felt just a smidge, especially in the sense of like, we have to talk to boys because, yeah. Anecdote that probably never, there wasn't really any anecdotes. I mean, the closest you get, as far as I can remember, is I'm going to say interviewee. I forget the names, but our interviewee talked about being asked by teachers and parents and so on for help and advice, but they never got as specific as like an example, I don't think. Not that I remember. Anyway, we're very close to a couple of bingos. That's where I'm at on the card. If you have an argument for a square yet to be circled, please put in the chat now. I'll scroll up a little bit to see if I missed anything ahead of time. Let's see. Yvonne Solomon, what wasn't a word salad? I don't even know what the point of the conversation. Yeah, I don't either. This is another one of those things where it's like the question of the title is very direct. Why do young men worship misogynist trolls? You would think that somewhere in there they would attempt to answer that question, right? And then again, come at it with an idea or three to try to counter that. But it was nothing. It said nothing. And they've both done TEDx's before, so they've done this kind of deal. And I understand that they're friends and they're just kind of chit-chatting with each other, but as far as a presentation is concerned, it achieved nothing. It informed of nothing. And yeah, it sounded like our speakers were completely disconnected from the reality of the world, both online and otherwise. That has been active for, again, at least as long as I've been doing YouTube. Nigh on 7 years now. When was the last time you heard somebody say nigh on? Right? Abdicast Diabli, Scribelight, they never vilified themselves, but the YouTube comments mention and a few other things would have been wretchedness. Yeah, but I don't see that as self-wretchedness. I mean, that's people being mean to him. That's not him saying, I deserve it. I mean, if he said, I deserve that kind of criticism, oh, woe is me, that would be wretchedness. That's not wretchedness. Plays victim? Yes, that's why I circled plays victim. But wretchedness, yeah. Keldriggs, so are you saying that the anecdote that probably never happened? Yeah, anecdoteception. Yeah. Roger Reynolds, there were no examples to even have a conversation about. I know. Like weightless example. I mean, the entire thing was a weightless example because there was no example given. And what they did allude to, they never paid off with anything. So Bridget, privilege, because it is an insane privilege to sit back and say the other people should do the work for us. When he got to like the marginalized, actually, you know, that also counts as argumentative non sequitur, because that came out of nowhere and had nothing to do with anything, especially when they're talking about men as they even use the word collective. And then suddenly it's marginalized. Like who? It was like he was giving an argumentative point from a different speech just then. It felt so out of place. So, no, I'm not going to give you privilege. I think that's still, I know you're trying to get the double bingo, and it's going to be a really high mark to jump to get the double bingo on privilege, but that definitely counts for argumentative non sequitur. Let's see. Okay. Any other arguments for squares to be circled? I know I'm being a real picky on here, but I want to make sure, because I mean, but admittedly, they didn't give us a whole lot to work with. They were kind of saying the same things over and over again, but just in very, again, broad and amorphous terms without any definitions. So there wasn't anything to really sink your teeth into. But if you have any other arguments, I'll take them now, unless I'm freezing up again and Chad is freezing up. Ebony Williams, like you said, this one was really big. Yeah, I was expecting something a bit more. I always expect more from TEDx than I usually end up having delivered to me. I hope springs eternal, right? And that's kind of, you know, I always go into these things because I don't know it. Almost every TEDx is a brand new speaker or speakers, a brand new topic or a new take on a topic that I'm familiar with. So I'm always like, okay, this is going to be the one, guys. I'm like the guy waiting at the bus stop. The bus has got to come sometime. Right? If I leave now, it's going to show up 3 seconds after I leave. I just know it. So I got to keep on it. Let's see. I see a comment coming through. Come on, StreamYard. Bring on the comments. There's always this lag between the live. Here we go. Bridget, how is it not privileged to sit back, demand people do something, and that you shouldn't have to, then be paid for it and have it advertised as a reputable source? Are you still talking about the marginalized comment? Here's the thing. If that had been a theme throughout the presentation in some fashion, then maybe, but it was so out of left field and just completely did not belong in that conversation. It doesn't count for privilege to me. It doesn't count as part of the presentation. It makes more sense to me as an argumentative non sequitur. I know you're going to be mad at me, but I get it. No, I understand the sentiment. Okay. The sentiment on its own. Yes, that is embodying privilege. But again, the strictures of the bingo card are within the realm of the presentation itself. And as far as I can tell, unless somebody's got something really good, privilege was not either mentioned or a theme of the overall presentation. So you're not wrong in the analysis of that out of left field, argument / point he made. But within the context of the presentation, it was not a feature. It was a bug, which I know it bugs you. But let's see. Advocats Diaboli, privilege. They got chairs. No one gets chairs in TEDx. Actually, not true. I've done at least 2 or 3 other TEDx's where they had chairs. And you'll see chairs usually when they have some big, featured speaker like the Elon Musk TEDx's or the that kind of stuff where they have an they're not usual. I'll give you that. Chairs and interviews on TEDx are not usual, but they're not that uncommon. But I get it. Spoonie the Rebel, the DEI squared, they said you got to teach them that's what they mean. I see, it's the difference between assuming to know and what they actually said. And they didn't really, as far as I can recall. Let's see. Advocates Diaboli. The guy's weird attitude about mentorship could be wretchedness. He seemed really hung up about himself being seen as a mentor, like it was a bad thing. That was interesting. And I found it very, obviously I pointed it out at the time. I found it very bizarre that he was not for role modeling. And I don't know what that means. I mean, yeah, that does seem completely bizarre. Why wouldn't you want to be for role modeling? Why wouldn't you, at least in your own philosophy, think of yourself as someone to emulate in the way of right behavior? If you really believe in what you're teaching others, if people are coming to you for advice, and you're obviously putting yourself out there as a consultant, you must believe to some extent that you represent a better version of a man than at least Andrew Tate, which isn't really a high bar to jump in my opinion, but all the same. So that was a little odd, wasn't it? Now, is that enough to say that he was making a commentary on his own feelings about himself? Was there enough there to say that was a direct self-criticism? Like I say, I get where you're coming from, and if there was just a little bit more from him, something, then maybe. I don't know. Any other opinions on that? I'm not going to go too much longer. I'm already at an hour and a half. Marta is watching YouTube. I see the presentation itself was pure unnecessity. So it's their privilege, but they didn't talk about privilege as a point, or maybe I'm misunderstanding. Presidency. Well, yeah. So, yeah. The general rule of the bingo card is if we're going to circle a square, it has to represent something that was within the presentation itself. We can make assumptions of motivation. We can think that they were alluding to this, that, or the other. And it is permissible to take the aggregate notion or aggregate through lines of the presentation and condense them into something as specific as privilege, if that is a prevalent part of the argument. So yeah, and I have done this on several occasions where it's like they never said the word privilege, but enough of the presentation related to the idea or concept of it that in the aggregate, it was a part and major part of the presentation. But that didn't happen here, as far as I can tell. I'm open to an argument, but we'll see. Gosh, I'm word salad. It's okay. It's all right. I one of the things I hate about Twitter, at least if I'm not paying for it, and I'm not, and other social media things, is when you can't edit something you've typed and you see a typo. My English major instincts just go nuts, and I have to like immediately type a correction of some kind or asterisk, this is what I meant kind of deal. I get it. I understood. Sorry, I'm old and really bad and right. It's okay. You're probably not that old. What is old? Right? What is old? It's just a word. What is old? Who knows anymore? All right. Everybody, I know it is so frustrating. It's especially frustrating watching these things, as you may know, but it's even more frustrating when you just feel like with a few more words, a little bit more specificity from the speakers, we could have a bingo. We could have a couple of bingos, but they were just so, it was cotton candy and not even that sweet. It was present, it's tangible, but there's not much there. And it's unfortunate because I thought that maybe this might have been a very interesting conversation if they had brought up the creation or at least the supporting and promotion of positive male role models in counterpoint to people like Andrew Tate. If they had brought up what might be driving young men to people like Andrew Tate in the first place, which was the promise of the title, at least the original title. I have a feeling TEDx does this from time to time. They'll post a video with a title of X, and then for some reason, like a day later or whatever, they'll change it to something else for who knows why. That's why I couldn't find it, I think. Either way, I think we're at the limit, guys. And so I appreciate the argumentation as always. I think that unfortunately our speakers just didn't give us quite enough to sink our teeth into on some of these squares. So we got a lot of squares circled. If this was the B card or the C card, we might have had 2 or 3 bingos by now, but this is the luck of the draw, as they say. So let's at least look at it in that sense. For those of you listening in the future, what do you think about this subject? What do you think would have been a better argument? Or if you think you could have improved their argument for them, even if you don't agree with it, how would you do so? Put those in the comments below. Programming note, I will be doing a Sunday stream this coming Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday, if you can believe it, where I will talk about a thing. I'm not quite sure yet. I usually don't decide until Saturday because who knows what will happen between now and Saturday. Every day is an adventure in the wonderful world of the world. I may also do ambush streams in between if topics strike me, although might be more apt to happen because my work days are becoming so mind-numbing. I might need something to distract me. So keep an eye on that. And to keep an eye on that, just follow me on Twitter at scribe_light, or you can join the Discord. Yes, I now have a Discord. Strange but true. And I only send out links to the Discord during these streams because that makes it a bit more exclusive and stuff. So I'm going to put a link into the chat right now. And if you go to that link, you will find yourself on the landing channel of the Discord. And all you have to do to join the Discord and get access to all the other channels is to say the secret word. And every stream has its own secret word. And so you go on the landing channel, all you have to do is say role model. And regardless of what your nickname is on Discord, whether we recognize it or not, if you say role model, we'll know, me and the other moderators, that you watched the stream to its effective conclusion and that you're a true fan of the channel. And now you get to join everybody else in being on a channel and chit-chatting about nice things because everybody there is so polite. Moderators have very little to do in the Discord. And likewise, moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. We really do appreciate it. Yeah, I hope everybody has a good rest of your Thursday. I hope you have a good and productive Friday. I hope you have a great weekend ahead of you. I hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.